I could have your attention, please. We have just a few brief announcements before the family enters the sanctuary. The Shiva will be observed here in the Betty Port Hall at Temple Sholem following the service this afternoon until 7 p.m. this evening. And the services will be officiated by Rabbi Shoshana Conover, Cantor Shira Ben David, Cantor Emeritus Aviva Katzman. As the family enters the sanctuary, I'll ask everyone to please rise. Not one of us wants to be here today, not for this. Each of us has a memory, and some of us a lifetime of memories of Ron. And I'll tell you, I have my own first meeting with Ron that I remember like it was yesterday. I remember that he was the head of the search committee that brought me to this synagogue to become an associate rabbi here. And I remember the way in which he spoke to me, asked these great questions of me with his playfulness and zest, his intellect and his kindness. And what struck me so much was that he wasn't asking about what kind of rabbi I would be, but what kind of person am I? That's what he cared about with everyone. What was the nature of their character? What would we bring to his life? And I have to say that I didn't take the job just to be close to Ron. I wanted to be close to Sherry too. And I am so grateful that I had the good fortune of being with Ron so often, so lovingly. And I came to adore and respect and revere Ron the way that anyone who knew him well did. And I'll say that I didn't just want to be with Ron. I didn't want to just be with Sherry. I wanted to be with Sherry and Ron together. Nothing more magical than your love. Nothing that brought out better things in life. Because your love was so easy and effusive and generous. It made Ron a better person, and in turn, he made each one of us better people. We couldn't help but always want to be around that. So today, in this heartbreaking situation, when we long for Ron, we long for his love and his light, our tradition gives us this small measure of comfort. Because here we are, celebrating the life of Ron Spielman in the Hebrew month of Kislev. This is the month that at the end of the month we celebrate the holiday called Hanukkah, where we rededicate ourselves to light. And the name of the month itself is instructive. Kislev, some make a beautiful play on it, saying that a kis is a pocket. Lev sounds like heart. So poetically, sometimes this is called the Hebrew month of a pocket of love. And certainly, when we think of Ron, he's this great pocket of love. And we were always such wonderful and grateful recipients of his love. And so here we are in this sanctuary, a pocket of love, a pocket of memories, a way in which we can remember our beloved Ron. And Sherry, we're grateful today that you are having so much support and so much love from your sisters, Candy and Wendy, and brothers-in-law, Richard and Ed. Ron loved them so much, and you loved him so much. He was so fond of his nephews, Brian and Leo. And Ron was also happy to be Uncle Ron to cousins Jordan and Adam, who were like brothers to David. And Ron's friends. He gave and received so much love, and you treasured him beyond measure. Now, there were just a few friends that Ron brought into Ron and Sherry's lives: Marv Levine, Bruce Salzberg, Jim Weissman, and Ed Cutchin. And then there were the friends that Sherry brought into Ron's life through her friendships with their wives, a much longer list. Larry Weil, Alan Hilder, and the husbands of the besties, Jeff Stern, Steve Dritz, Marty Sackman, Larry Zachary, Howard Zweibel, and the late Mark Brody, and the late Stu Dolan. Our condolences go out to all of you. And of course, and especially to Charles Eifergen, who, while Ron was an only child, he was happy to have a friend that was like a brother. And Ron certainly can rest easily knowing that Charles is David's second father and will always be there for you. So in this pocket of love, we listen to words from the Psalms that offer wisdom and solace. And with that, I'll invite Cantor Ben David.
Shaviti Adonai Lenagdi Tamid Kimimini Balemot Lachen Samach Libi Vayagel Kvoti אף בשרי אשכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת, תודיעני אורח חיים, אורח חיים. סובה שמחות את פניך, נימות במנחה נצח. שביתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד, כי מימיני בא למות.
Ralph Waldo Emerson defines success in this way. What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. Ron was a success. It is an honor now to reunite some beautiful clergy on this bema. So I invite Cantor Emerita, Cantor Aviva Katzman to sing Psalm 23, and I invite Rabbi Steve Lowenstein to stand next to her and lead us in the recitation in English.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנאות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינעמוני. תערוך לפניי טרח לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. Die Shanta, die Shanta, die Shanta Vashemen Roshi. Die Shanta Vashemen Roshi. Kosi Revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני, לאורך ימים.
Before we read the translation, a few brief words. British Indian poet Nikita Gill once wrote, "It's eerily terrifying that there is no sound when a heart breaks. Car accidents end with a bang, falling ends with a thud. Even writing makes the scratching sound of pencil against paper. But the sound of a heart breaking is completely silent. Almost as though no one, not even the universe itself, could create a sound for such devastation. Almost as though silence is the only way the universe could pay its respect to the sound of a heart falling apart." Sherry and Lauren, David and Bill, family and friends, today our hearts break with all of you. Thinking about our tall, skinny, big-hearted man with the perfect hair, big-hearted friend, and when he smiled, his smile was so big, our friend Ronnie Spielman. Just this past Thanksgiving, 3.5 weeks ago, he texted me, "You are always and have been a dear and caring friend. Love from my engaged daughter, Lauren, David, Sherry, and I." I'm truly honored that Rabbi Conover asked that I read the 23rd Psalm. From the day I started as a rabbi right here on this bima almost 28 years ago. How'd that happen? I have read and recited this psalm thousands of times. But one time I recited it was quite different. And I thought about that for a moment. I really got to know Ron and Sherry at Rush Hospital about an hour before Bill died, his beloved father. The temple got a call that it was imminent, and I ran to the hospital. Not really sure who the Spielmans were, but I was there. I sat with him at the hospital in early April of 1997, April 1st to be exact. And Ronnie was the most devoted and loving son that I've ever seen. To Bill and to Miriam, two incredibly loving and generous people. On April 1st of 1997, Rabbi Schwartz was a month from retirement. Rabbi Pedakowski was just hired and would arrive in 2 months, and Aviva, you and I were flying by the seat of our pants. So Cantor Katzman and I buried Bill at Memorial Park, and then dedicated the most amazing headstone that said Spielman in aluminum. And Ron worked so hard to get that Spielman in aluminum. The following year, we dedicated that headstone. It's that same spot that earlier today, Ron was buried. And so after Bill's death, Ronnie wanted all of the Republic Window Factory workers to remember his father. And so about 5 days after the funeral, I stood on a forklift with Ronnie in the old factory on Diversey with hundreds of employees, right at the shift change, so everyone could hear. And Ronnie asked me to recite the 23rd Psalm and say Kaddish, while someone translated it into Spanish for everyone to understand. Ronnie then spoke of his dad and honored him in such an extraordinary way. I'll never forget reciting the 23rd Psalm on the factory floor. And from that moment, Ronnie re-engaged in Judaism. A few months later, we hung an aluminum mezuzah on the round revolving door of the New Republic building on Goose Island. We hung a few at the beautiful home on Orchard. Ronnie joined the board of Temple Sholem a short time after that, worked his way up to RSVP, as his license plate used to say, Ron Spielman, Vice President, RSVP. And then went on to do a pretty good job hiring an amazing rabbi. The psalmist said that we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and we do so together. Sherry and David, an engaged daughter, Lauren. There are so many that will walk this valley with you. You are not alone. You are all in our thoughts. Loss is our legacy, insight our gift, memory is our guide. We learn so much from the people who leave us as those who remain. Grief and loss remind all of us that we love someone else more than we love ourselves. So many people loved our tall, skinny, big-hearted friend with that great singing voice, whose heart simply gave out. Please join with me in the service supplement. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
As I said before, while Ron was an only child, he had one friend who was like a brother, Charles Ifergan. Charles and Susan, if you would come here. She's standing by your side, wherever she is.
Ron, please come back. I'm confused. Just yesterday I was cutting your hair. My mind is troubled. My heart is broken. My soul is aching. Please come back. There is so much more to see and to do. Lauren's wedding, birthdays, anniversary, maybe grandchildren. If you come back, I promise I will stop teasing you with my endless sarcastic sense of humor. I promise, I really promise. I will not tell you anymore that you are fucked up. Oh, I'm sorry, Lord, that you are screwed up, because we are all screwed up, and I'm even more screwed up than you are. I will take your side. Yes, I will, when you argue with Sherry, even though she's almost always right. I promise I will. I will not tell anybody anymore that's how handsome David is, but he sure doesn't look like you. And Lauren, with those beautiful Chinese eyes, do we know who the father is real? I don't. And what a mama's boys you were, to the great, great delight of Sherry. But please come back. I will stop teasing you about how scared to death I am when you are driving and everybody else in the back of the car is praying. Or make fun of the dozens of diets you tried to lose those baby rolls you had since you were a baby. And all the action movies that you watched for hours and hours, I really think they contributed to your brain shrinkage. I will pretend that I will never, never say anything of how late you always are. I pretend. I swear I will pretend. I promise I will not tease you again. I will not scream in the middle of the shampoo room when all the assistants hide because they know you tip only 50 cents. I will not tease you about the spill breeze that you used to bring to restaurant, pouring your glass while the waiter was giving you the evil eye. I bet they spit on our food. Or when you flatten your spiky hair that Sherry loved so much. You might have gotten lucky those nights. But I understand why you don't want to come back. In your new world, when you look at the sunshine, it's not dark anymore. It's brilliant. Those agents from the city who will choke you to death, yes, to death, financially and emotionally. You won't need to kiss those bankers, and I will say in French, behind, you know what I mean? Or pay those astronomical lawyer's fee without any money that you had anymore. If you don't come back, you must be free, happy, the loving soul that you used to be. You'll be the old Ron that your family and all your friends loved. We will miss the happy Ron, the twinkle in his eyes, his jovial smile and laughter, his generosity, his good heart, his stupidity, yes, his stupidity, your willingness to listen without judgment, just with your sense of humor. Ron, please come back. Please come back. In your new world, we want you to find the peace, the happiness that you struggle for so many years to have. But please come back. You're my friend. I miss you, I love you. Yes, you're my friend. Please come back.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I'll just say to you, Charles, to Rabbi Steve, thank you both for all the ways that you allowed us to feel Ron once again and to feel his presence right here with us. Thank you, and thank you. And I know that David is going to share some words as well. And as he approaches, I'll just say to you, Lauren, what you know already, how relieved and happy and excited Ron was that you found your Bashert in Bill, and that you have someone who is always taking care of you in that loving way that your dad always did.
To see everyone who made such an effort to be here, for my mom, Sherry, for my sister, Lauren, and for my dad, Ron, and me, David. It really means everything. It's incredible. Thank you all for being here. You're all mishpucha, and I know my dad is elated looking down here today. My dad lived his life in complete dedication to my devoted mother, his daughter, Lulu Bell, who will always be Daddy's little girl, and me. I recently had a conversation with my father, who could sometimes be a stubborn man. I suggested that he think of the names of all of his best friends. I told him he could even include myself, as well as my amazing, unbelievable sister, mother, and soon-to-be brother-in-law, Bill, the people who meant the most to him, whoever popped into his head. I was pleasantly surprised that he did not put the kibosh on my train of thought. I just rolled with it and kept going. I asked him to then remember those names and to tell said people that he loved them and appreciated them every time he spoke with them going forward, and even to go the extra mile and reach out to them to let them know. I reminded him to be grateful for them because there is no other option, and gratitude for what you have will bring you comfort. I told him, yes, Dad, you're a silver fox with the hair of a 20-year-old and the tall, lean frame that shows the commitment to fitness. Two great qualities, great looking inside and out. In a stroke of this is amazing, my dad really seemed to take what his futzel Boise, as he affectionately called me, was saying to heart. I then told him, Dad, please never forget that you are loved, and you are loved a lot. He looked more at peace than I had seen him in a long while. He just smiled, thanked me, gave me a big hug, and said, I love you, son. Later that night, I got a text from my dad that read, David, thank you for being my son and for the effort you made to help me. Thank you for that talk. I am taking everything you said very seriously, and I know it was all out of love. I love you with all of my heart and with every breath that I take. God bless you, Dad. I'm so lucky to have that text as a memory from him. Dad, I hope you have finally found the peace you've deserved for so long, and like the lyrics of your favorite Phil Collins song, you'll be here in my heart always. I love you, Dad.
So Susan Ifergan, who I think we can all agree is Charles's better half, will share some words about our beloved Ron. Ron would have appreciated that comment too. I know, Charles.
I, just like all of you here, I just can't believe Ron is gone. Charles and I are fortunate to have had a relationship with Ron and Sherry that spans close to 40 years. We've long felt that Ron, Sherry, David, and Lauren were part of our extended family. And we've spent countless holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, vacations together with so many wonderful, treasured times and so many memories of Ron, both happy and sad. I have long felt a particularly special connection to Ron. In fact, years ago, I came to discover that he was kind of like, and I'm going to say it in my best New York accent, my brother from another mother. About 20 years ago, we were celebrating Passover at Ron and Sherry's home, and I was seated next to Mim, Ron's mother. She and I were reflecting on the fact that we were both originally from New York, and I happened to mention that I was born, my mother told me this, I don't know, years ago, that I was born at Women's Hospital on Amsterdam Avenue and delivered by a Dr. Bemis. Mim looked at me in disbelief, and she said, my jaw dropped when she said, Ron was born at Women's Hospital and delivered by Dr. Bemis. I ask you, what are the odds of that? We couldn't get over the serendipity of this remarkable coincidence that Ron and I were brought into this life via the hands of the same person. So ever since that moment, for me, Ron became my brother. And you know, if you remember, he had a very New York City manner of speaking. The ERs were always like an A. My father, my mother. It always warmed my heart because it reminded me of some of my family, my own family members, the way he spoke, and Ron felt like home to me. I really adored him. And though the last 15 years of his life were rife with extraordinary difficulties, challenges, and heartbreaks, I want to try and remember him when he wasn't so defeated, downtrodden, and carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders without respite. I want to try and remember him when his pain wasn't so palpable. But he did have great integrity and some of the most remarkable perseverance you could ever witness, given how he was feeling for so long. The Ron I want to remember could easily break out in song. He loved Sinatra, and he had some legendary dance moves. I bet so many of you will never forget his rendition of John Travolta's Staying Alive. And when he got up and danced, I always wanted to get up and join him. I usually did. He could be so much fun, and he had a smile that absolutely warmed the room. Ron was a great friend to both Charles and I, and he was always at the ready to talk and provide compassion and counsel as needed. And something I will always remember about him and thank him for and treasure was the special bond he had with our daughter, Lana. She was the baby of our family, and their friendship and fondness for each other was so incredibly sweet. Ron was a loving man, a dutiful, doting son to his parents, Mim and Bill. Sherry, David, and Lauren were the world to him. He loved them so much, and he knew how fortunate he was to have Sherry as his wife. He recognized what an incredible person she is. And I know how much he was looking forward to having you, Bill, in his life as his son-in-law. I'm extremely grateful for the last time I saw Ron. He came to my home, our home, last Thursday morning. He was only there for 10 or 15 minutes. And when I walked him out to his car, he said, "I love you." Thanks, David. And I said, "I love him too." Those were our very last words to each other. And I feel so blessed that those were the words we spoke. For now, I'll say goodbye to my brother. I will love him always. I don't know who wrote this quote, but I found it and it just resonated with me. Grief never ends, but it changes. It's a passage, not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness, nor a lack of faith. It is the price of love. So I just ask you all to please don't ever hesitate to tell the people that you love them.
In just over a week, we will celebrate the holiday of Hanukkah. And Rabbi David Hartman once wrote about the courage of the Maccabees, not in their power of fighting, but in their power of lighting. When they found their temple in ruins, the first thing they did was to look for a way to rededicate the light. And when all they found was one small cruse of oil, barely enough to last even one day, they still had the courage to light it. And so the story goes, it miraculously lasted for 8 days. In the dead of winter every year from that moment forward, because of their courage to light, we as a people rededicate ourselves to light. Hartman writes, one ought to pour infinite yearnings even into small vessels. The strength to continue and to persevere grows by virtue of the courage to initiate the process of lighting that first flame. Only lamps which are lit may continue to burn beyond their anticipated lifespan. We know that Ron's light continues to shine. And Hanukkah now will always be associated with Ron. So I invite you not to associate it with his death, but to his life. Hillel says that when it comes to holiness, we only increase light. So for each night of Hanukkah, a rededication to life through light, let us appreciate the qualities of our beloved Ron and his light that will continue to guide us. On the first night, let us celebrate his integrity and authenticity. He was born in New York, Susan, at the same hospital as you in Manhattan. He was born on August 27, 1948. He was an only child to William and Miriam Spielman, Bill and Mim. Now, Bill was in the windows and doors business, and the New York owner of Republic Windows and Doors wanted to expand the chain to the Midwest, so his family moved to Chicago when Ron was 8. And Bill was so savvy that in time, he bought out the original owner. Ron grew up in West Rogers Park, and they had no other family here. So those three became an incredibly tight unit. Debonair and dapper, with a swagger and confidence befitting a made man, think De Niro in Casino, that was Bill. And Mim was beautiful. In her eyes, Ron could do no wrong, maybe a little wrong. And every year, Bill and Mim brought Ron to Vegas for vacation. And here are two pieces of family lore from those vacations with young Ron. One has him sitting with his parents when they went to see Don Rickles. And you know how Rickles works a crowd. He roasts everyone. So with Ron looking on, Don Rickles makes some comment to Bill. And Bill responds with such swagger that Rickles himself was afraid to roast him any further. He was convinced that Bill was a made man. And when Ron was a preteen, Mim and Bill would leave him in his hotel room while they went for a night on the town. But Ron wasn't going to stay in his hotel room. So we'd go down and roam through the casino downstairs, and catching sight of him, the casino manager just winked and said, "You must be 18. He was 12. Ron took that confidence and applied it to his studies. He went to Mather and then Northwestern. And at Northwestern, he was first in his class at the undergraduate business school, which was quite a feat because he spent his last 2 years of school living in the fraternity house. And Ron had big job offers after he graduated, but his father, Bill, offered to pay for his MBA if Ron worked in the family business. So Ron began working toward his MBA at night at Kellogg while he was working the day at Republic. Well, he took these classes at the Kellogg school on Wednesday nights, and there was just one problem with this, and that's that his favorite show, Hawaii Five-0, was on Wednesday nights. So he asked his father, how much will it affect his earning power if he didn't get his MBA? Bill said it wouldn't affect it at all. So with that, Ron dropped out and watched many more episodes of Hawaii Five-0. On the second night of Hanukkah, let's remember his playfulness. His father, Bill, spoke so much Yiddish, and they shared a Borscht Belt humor. He inherited that from his father and passed it down to David, literally, with this Jackie Mason soundbox that said, "Screw you and your friend too," and "You're a schmuck, the biggest." And as Susan shared, it was so fun the way in which any time he heard any music from Saturday Night Fever, he turned into John Travolta, or as Sherry refers to him in those moments, John Revolting. It didn't matter where he was, in a buttoned-up restaurant or at Olivia's wedding, he would be John Revolting. But he did have the moves and the voice. Now, he grew up going to Vegas, and so Ron knew a thing or two about showmanship with his playfulness. So listen to this, and it's going to take a bit before you hear about his playfulness. Ron, in his early 30s, went on a business trip to Vegas, and little does he know that a 28-year-old Sherry, his beshert, whom he has not yet met, was there with her family too. They also took annual family trips to Vegas. So they're sitting in separate tables across the way in the MGM Grand Dining Room, and Sherry's mom, Sugar, is lecturing her in front of her sisters and her dad, Leo, to stop having so much fun. It's time to get married. And midway through the lecture, Sugar spotted this handsome man, tall, with great hair and a great suit, in the dining room, and Sugar said that Sherry should go to talk to him. And Sherry said, "Over my dead body." But then Sherry couldn't help herself. She looked over, and then she said, "Oh, he looks familiar. I think he's from Chicago. So her family dared her to go over there, and Sherry said, I'll do that under one condition: you stop commenting on my life. They agreed. I don't think they really lived up to it. Candy and Wendy are shaking their heads. So she went up to Ron and said, Hi, are you from Chicago? And he said, yes. And she said, oh God, now what? So they got to talking, and they realized that they lived in the same apartment building. So they went out to get a drink, and then they also realized that they went to the same college but missed each other by a year. And after dating for 3 months, which was a record for Ron, those of you who knew him at the time, he had some commitment problems. But then he asked Sherry if he could come over, and she said sure. And Sherry, by the way that he said it, she thought that he was going to be breaking up with her. And when he came to the door, he looked ashen, and his shirt was all sweaty and sticking to his chest. And he said, well, I just wanted to say that I'm able to get 2 tickets to Europe for the price of 1, and just wanted to know if you'd come to Paris and Brussels with me on my business trip. And she said to him, are you inviting me to go to Europe? And he said, yeah. And so that was where they truly fell in love. At that point, there were no more other dates. He would make her beautiful mixed tapes. He got her an extraordinary present from Lalit. And they knew this was it. Well, they thought they knew, but 2 years later, where's the ring, Sherry was wondering. So it's September, a month before Sherry's family's annual trip to Vegas, and Sherry told Ron that she wanted to get married. And she said, you know, I'm not getting any younger, and if you want to get married again, also let's do this, but if not, let's just be done, let's just call it. And she thought that that was perfect because it gave him time to think while she'd be in Vegas with her parents. And so Ron then said to her, well, I want to come with you to Vegas. So she said, well, you know what, you'll have to ask my dad. Isn't that great? And so her dad said, you know what, if you're not engaged, you can't come on this trip. So Sherry said, oh, well, guess you're not coming on the trip, and she went. So they go to a nice dinner with her family. She goes to a nice dinner with her family, and the waiter comes over with this giant metal tray. He lifts up the top, and there's an envelope, and it says, are you from Chicago? She looks up, and there's Ron. Well, the rest is history. They got married in December here at Temple Sholem in Rabbi Schwartz's office. And then they had a lunch at the pump room, where, of course, the person who was working the desk was an ex-girlfriend of Ron's. Playfulness. On the 3rd night of Hanukkah, let's remember his unwavering devotion to family. And it started with his deep relationships with his parents. As an only child and then living at home for the first 2 years of college, he made sure to be always devoted to his parents. Rabbi Lowenstein offered some memories of the dedication after his father's death to having the street outside of Republic named the William Spielman Boulevard. And Ron even commissioned a life-size portrait of his father so that you'd see it right when entering the building. And after his father died, for 15 years, Ron tirelessly cared for his mother, Mim. And he took that great love for his parents and then poured that kind of love into the home he was building with Sherry. They both wanted to have 2 kids, Ron didn't want to have a situation where there would be an only child. So David came along 2 years after they were married, and then Lauren 4 years after that. Now, Ron, as a dad, he loved babies, and he was so involved with them. Gave them bottles, changed their diapers. David was a terrible sleeper, no surprise. And your father would stay up with you in the nights. And growing up, as much as Ron loved to watch movies, he would watch them with David, so that when David was, I think, maybe 8 years old, maybe younger than that, they watched Predator on VHS. They loved watching these macho movies like Die Hard and Rambo and True Lies. He probably holds the world record for watching Troy, probably over 850 times, and Top Gun even more often than that. In fact, they built a surround sound soundtrack to listen to these movies in full theater quality sound. And every year then, David would write birthday cards for his father with a spreadsheet in the card that would say these action heroes' age relative to their dad, to his dad, Ron. And always these action stars were older, so he was hoping that then Ron would feel a little younger. Like Sylvester Stallone still doing Rambo, or Harrison Ford, who's about to star in Indiana Jones 5. Clint Eastwood, De Niro, Pacino, Schwarzenegger. He loved watching these movies with David, and David got that bug too. And he also loved to watch romantic comedies, like When Harry Met Sally, or You've Got Mail. So Lauren loved to be able to watch those movies too, but not for the movies themselves, just to sit in Ron's lap and be with him. She was Daddy's little girl, dumpling, Lulu Bell, Lulu Lump. He would take any opportunity to dance with her. And at Lauren's bat mitzvah, he wanted to sing to her, but Sherry was concerned that maybe that would horrify Lauren. So Sherry, made sure to talk to Lauren beforehand. And she said, you know, if he sings to you, you're going to have that memory for the rest of your life. So Ron sang The Way You Look Tonight, and he wowed everyone, even Lauren's very discerning friends. And David felt a little sour on that because Ron sang at his bar mitzvah, Sunrise, Sunset. Ron loved things that connected the generations all together. He loves that his children have treasured jewelry of his parents. He would take Lauren's hand when Lauren would wear Mim's ring, which she does every day. And Ron would just take it and just hold her hand, and in so doing, feel like he was holding Lauren's hand and Mim's hand at the same time. He loved that David had this great chai from Bill. Makes you look a little bit like a made man, too. And he loves the way in which you share another love of his, which is music. And he loves the way in which it bonds the two of you. So when we're at the Shiva after this, you'll hear some of those songs that they all love to sing together. You'll hear them at the Shiva. You'll also see beautiful pictures that Lauren put together. On the fourth night, let's remember his commitment to community. He took over the business from his dad, and his employees loved him so much. In fact, so many stayed in touch with Ron right up to the day he died. He had such a big heart and cared about them all so much. And those Christmas parties where he would MC the game show, he tried to give it up, and they requested it so much he had to bring it back. People followed him. They loved him, revered him, because he created real community everywhere he was. He did that at Temple Sholem, being on our board, creating such a network of love with so many of you here. On the fifth night, let's remember his steadfast friendship. Look at how many people are here today because he was such a good friend. We loved his mentorship, his guidance, his humor, his ability to take a good ribbing, but Charles also to give a good ribbing too. He was endlessly kind, and he lit up our lives, and we continue to share his light through those stories we share about him, often through tears of laughter. On the sixth night, we'll remember his dedication to fitness. He worked out like a fanatic. He didn't feel comfortable in his skin during the day until he worked out. It was an outlet for him to deal with anxiety, and it was also a beautiful connection point with David and Bill. He was a third-degree black belt in karate, and David likes to tell about one of the tournaments in which he broke a dude's nose. He became a runner, and he loved going to the East Bank Club, and David loved going with him there. And it brings to those who shared his fitness fanaticism some comfort to know that he died doing what brought him joy, working out. It was his emotional outlet, a happy place. On the seventh night of Hanukkah, let's remember his fearlessness in loving. He loved all of us, but no one like Sherry, and no one like his kids. At Sherry's grandmother's 60th birthday party, while Sherry was pregnant with David, he sang, "Have I told you lately that I love you?" He was always so precise in the way that he talked about his love for Sherry, sometimes to the point that she said, "Why don't you just say it to me? I'm right here." He worshiped Sherry for very good reason. There were hard years after leaving Republic Windows, and he struggled, but he was buoyed by Sherry's great love, and he was always there wholeheartedly for his kids. Sherry, you were an angel through these past 15 years. For better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. The one thing that was constant is your love. His love for you and your love for him. And when he saw this reflected in the relationship between Bill and Lauren, nothing made him happier. Nothing. He loved that you have found what you deserve. That same kind of great love that he shared with your mom. Bill, you provided for him not only a way in which for him to see Lauren, the apple of his eyes, as happy as he's ever seen, but also you gave him that beautiful extended family. And also you gave him an opportunity for him to see just how much he was appreciated, even by people who were newly meeting him and falling in love with him the way that we all do. So finally, on the 8th night of Hanukkah, let us celebrate the way in which he had the courage to bring light to darkness. When Sherry had her hip replacement, Ron was the very best nurse. He took such good care of you. And when you were diagnosed with breast cancer, he went to every doctor's appointment, and he saw you through to the end of radiation. And when David had a health scare, Ron was so helpful, taking David to doctor's appointments, being your advocate, taking careful note of everything. You could look to your dad because he knew what to do, and he gave you the confidence to trust in yourself. Any darkness, he was able to see the light, and he brought us great light. In his latter years, Ron was afraid that something would happen to him, so he made sure to see David back to health, see Lauren and Bill engaged, see Sherry through to the end of radiation. And that all kept him going. And if his body could have held out, he would have stayed with you forever. He cared so much about taking care of family, bringing you light. He had such a big heart, and there was only so much it could take. He was so generous with everyone, yet sometimes he didn't take that same care with himself because he was so worried. We cannot change the fact that our precious Ron has died, but we can dedicate ourselves to sharing his light and his love with this world. This world needs it, and so do we. In the words of Merritt Malloy, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Let us give the great love of Ron away. Zichrono livracha. Ron's memory is a blessing. It's our light. He is our love. I invite you now to rise for El Molei Rachamim, where we pray that Ron's soul is bound up in eternal life.
El Marachamim, Shochein Mamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Keroshim Utorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Ra'anan Ben Zev Miriam Shel Halach Leolamo Bal Harachamim Yasirehu B'Seiter Knafav Leolamim Yitror HaChaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Ron Spielman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. He loved music. He shared this love with Lauren and with David. And David has a very special favorite artist, Elvis Presley. And so as we think about Ron's love, we think about this song.
Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfilled. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. Love me tender, love me long, take me to your heart, for it's there that I belong and will never part. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfilled. For my darlings, I love you, and he always will.
We rise for Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, v'alma divrach yiruteh v'amlich malchuteh, v'chayachon uv'yomachon uv'chayed l'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalai v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevorach leolam ulamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha. Barichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav. V'yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.